Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Gavin Richard Presents. I hope everyone is doing well. Um, just give me 1 second. Is the wind affecting the microphone? I got this HVB on. I'm trying to stay cool in the summer. Let me just put it on a little bit lower. Hold on a second, guys. I didn't know if anybody could hear me with the volume raised up, with the air on high. So let me go. Hey, what's up, everybody? I think that we got it there. Okay. Um, Welcome to another episode. Gavin Richard Presents. I'm Gavin Richard. Hope everybody is doing great. You haven't heard from me in a while. I've just been trying to stay busy and take care of some business. I hope everything is good. I wanted to talk about a few things. There's a lot to really talk about, but I'm actually wanted to talk about something in particular, and perhaps sometime tomorrow I'm going to get more into some things I want to talk about. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the rapper XXXTentacion. I don't even know what the hell his name is. I didn't really even follow the guy. I saw that he passed away. He was real popular. Well, he was murdered, actually. That's something. I'm good. He was murdered. And, mad respect to his family, to him. My condolences and prayers. At 20 years old, to be murdered. Nobody should die at 20 years old. No one. And that's just unfortunate. It's terrible. I found out that they did arrest someone recently for the crime, so I don't know all the details. I don't certainly want to say, this person is guilty or not, but the suspect is Dedrick Williams. So we don't know for sure. But, I think this brother, he was also a father. So he was a young man that lost his life at the point where his career was taking off. And I never really listened to him. I know he was real popular. I did see where Tariq Nasheed posted a video. Shout out to Tariq of the rap of XXXTentacion, where he was talking about there was no such thing as white privilege. So he was, being quite niggerish and cooning. But nevertheless, that's not a reason for him to be murdered the way he was, being shot multiple times. And that was outside of a motorcycle dealership in a attempted robbery, or in a robbery, rather. So, he had his album debuted. His second album debuted at #1 on Billboard 200 with singles like "Sad and Changes." I really don't even follow hip hop like talking about it too much anymore. I've listened to some of it, but I feel like the hip hop industry, especially now, is just stupid, and it's watered down. It's to ignorance. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what to make of it anymore. It's not what I was when I was growing up. But nevertheless, I send my condolences to his family. I hope that this person, if it is him, that he is brought to justice, and that they will get justice as well and some closure. And since we're talking about the music industry, some sad news came today that the patriarch of the Jackson family, Joe Jackson, passed away. Excuse me, let me turn this off. Okay. Hold on a second, guys. Breaking news: Drew Hepkins from the Drew Story News. Drew is a good friend of mine. He's actually doing an interview tonight on the Ed Higgins Here show. We think it'll be on Facebook at 7:00. So if you watch Drew, if you've seen his videos, he's done a lot of research on Michael Jackson, on the Cosby show, the Cosby case that's been going on, and detailing specifics about what was going on at that trial. And when you look at my videos, the points that Drew was pointing about the so-called accusers and the media's fascination and their frenzy over the Cosby situation. He does a lot of detailed research with that, and you should check out his interview if you get a chance. He's going to send me a link later, and I'll post it so everyone can see. But nevertheless, as I was speaking before the alert came in, Joe Jackson, the patriarch of the Jackson Five, the Jackson family, excuse me, passed away at age 89. It was reported sometime last week that Mr. Jackson was suffering from terminal pancreatic cancer. And he was in his final stages, and his family was with him at this time. And it originally they had stated he had died a couple of days earlier, but apparently no, he passed away this morning at about 3:30 a.m. Uh, he was survived by his wife, Catherine, of over 60 years. We know Catherine Jackson, mother of Michael and Janet and the rest of the Jackson family. And he, lived 89 years old. Was a long life. And in actuality, Mr. Jackson is the eldest of 5 children. He had 2 brothers, one who died last year, Lawrence. He has a brother, Luther. Luther, if I'm not mistaken, is a guitar player in a blues band. He had 2 sisters, Lula Mae and Verna Mae. His father was Samuel Jackson. He was a university professor, and he was a slave. And he was born to Crystal Lee King. Don't have a lot of information on her. But Lee King, she died at the age of 90. And Mr. Samuel Jackson, Joe's father, he lived almost to be 100 years old. So those Jacksons, they live a long time. He's blessed with. I'm sorry, Joe was Samuel's son, and Samuel's father, Israel, which is Joe's grandfather, was a slave. And he lived to be close to 100 years old. So he lived to be 90, appears to be 95 years old, 95, 96. So yeah, Joe Jackson lived a very long life. He had dreams of becoming a boxer. He was in the Golden Gloves program, and he was actually previously married before he married Catherine. And Catherine's maiden name was Catherine Screws. And when he married Catherine, he was actually living in East Chicago, Indiana, and he moved to Gary, Indiana, after meeting Catherine, who was in Washington High School. And they married in 1949, and in January 1950, they purchased their 2300 Jackson Street small 2-bedroom home near Gary, Indiana. And they had 10 children. 1 child died previously, Brandon. He was Marlon's brother. But of course, out of all the 10, there's Reby, there's Jackie, there's Tito, there's Jermaine, there's Marlon, there was Brandon who died, and Randy, Janet, and there was Michael. Of course, we know who Michael is. And he had another daughter who was born from a affair that Joe had, Giovanni Jackson. And she was on the talk recently talking about when she wrote a book, I think sometime last year, about her relationship with the Jackson family. I'm looking at the screen, looking at you guys and reading the screen on Wikipedia here, but you can all I'll post a link up on Joe's credentials and what he's did. But Joe Jackson, to get to the point of everything, he actually, while he was married, was supporting his family, working as a full-time crane operator and a part-time job at American Foundries in East Chicago. So, and while he was doing this, his wife, Catherine, was also working part-time in the late 50s at Sears. So while he was doing this and Joe took an interest in playing music, he briefly formed a band called the Falcons, and he played guitar. And one night after Joe came home from work, he noticed a guitar string was broken on his guitar. And when he confronted his sons about it, of course, he was angry. and we've seen the movie of the Jackson 5 American Dream. I remember that was my first time, not my first time acquainted with Michael Jackson, because I can be a kid. I was a kid remembering, the moonwalk. Well, not the moonwalk. I was born in '86, but I remember Captain EO when he did the moonwalk in that too. I mean, he always did the moonwalk in the '80s, but I'm rambling, guys. I'm sorry. But no, I was familiar with the Jacksons, the American Dream movie. If anyone remembers, that was a miniseries that aired on ABC in 1992, November of 1992. And they detailed that story where Joe whipped Tito for playing with his guitar. And then afterwards, and this actually happened, he gave Tito the guitar and told him, "Show me what you know." And they broke out into song with the older boys, Jackie, Jermaine, Tito, as well as Marlon. And Joe told Kate, those boys can play. And he, right there in 1964, he took an interest and he formed the Jackson Brothers, the Jackson Four, taking his older boys out. And it wasn't until later on when Michael got a little bit older, he put Michael up in the front, and Michael became the front man for the Jackson 5. So Michael, so he is responsible for these kids' success in the music business. And without him, I don't think there would be a Michael or Janet Jackson or Jackson 5 or LaToya. I left LaToya out. Excuse me. I'm sorry about that. She was born, I think, a little bit before Michael was. And, the Jackson 5. I remember this was huge when this black family debuted in the 70s and late 60s into the 70s. You never saw a black cartoon show with the Jackson, that you had with the Jackson 5 brothers. You never saw a black boy group, basically, where they were singing songs in front of white, not just white folks or in white clubs, but they were performing on a national level on the Ed Sullivan Show, on American Bandstand. They were on Soul Train, which was very popular and huge in the 70s. And when you made appearances on those shows, your record sales were guaranteed to go up, especially on Soul Train. They didn't leave that part out. When Soul Train debuted in the late 1960s, Gladys Knight was actually the first artist to guest star on Soul Train when Don Cornelius had it playing in syndication in Chicago. He didn't move to Los Angeles till early 70s, just like when Berry Gordy moved Motown to Los Angeles from Detroit in the 70s. So you had this perfect marriage of black culture and black music blended in together in one, with those two groups coming out, with Soul Train moving to Los Angeles, and then Miss Berry Gordy moving Motown to Los Angeles. And the Jackson 5, the Temptations, the Supremes, all of them debuted. Matter of fact, it is credited, Gladys Knight is the one credited with introducing the Jackson 5 to Motown and getting the audition. They actually auditioned twice for Motown. The first time they didn't get in, but the second time, Berry Gordy was blown away with Michael's, James Brown's, his interpretation of James Brown's Baby, Baby, Baby. I got the feeling. So with that being said, Joe Jackson, however, is the one that brought the Jackson 5 to mainstream television and to mainstream culture, to pop culture. And without him, it's evident and it's clear that there would be no Jackson 5. The things that he did and things that his kids did have an impact on the United States and on the world for years to come. Nobody ever saw an entertainer of the caliber of Michael Jackson, and that's credited to Joe Jackson. Nobody ever saw a black female like Janet Jackson, who's dominated music in the mid to late 80s. And even though she fired her father as her manager, and Michael didn't have him as his manager as well, his impact is still felt and was still resonating with Janet. And recently, she made a tribute to him at an awards show this past Sunday, giving tribute to her father because obviously she knew he was sick. In Joe Jackson, I read that he was trying to keep his family out from seeing him allegedly, and who knows what that the truth of that. But perhaps in Joe's spirit, being the tough guy that he was, he didn't want to see him perhaps in a weak state. You know, being the man he was and how he lived his life, the things he did with his kids. We know the stories of the things that he did with Michael. But and getting to that, years later, Michael talked about how his father, he claims to beat him and sometimes hit him with a belt or switch or electric cord and things of that nature. And Joe Jackson has admitted he has done those things and he never apologized for it. And the reason why he never apologized for it is because he did not want his kids in Gary, Indiana to grow up and become criminals or wind up dead. And they could not hang out and socialize with certain people that were out there in Gary. In fact, his wife, Catherine, talked about it, how Gary, Indiana was the number one capital at one point, murder capital in the United States during that time. And they didn't want their kids hanging around with the wrong crowd. And that was common. If your parents didn't know who you were hanging out with, or if it was someone they didn't want you to hang out with, you weren't allowed to mess with them, period. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. Nowadays, kids, and he talked about this too, you see parents that treat their children like they're friends. When they're not friends, what you have is a relationship between father and son, or mother and child, and of that nature. And parents are the ones that are responsible for their kids. When you live in my house, you follow my rules. That's just the way it was. And Michael was a very sensitive person. Did Joe go too far with some things, with some stuff he said? He talked about how Joe teased him about his nose and about his looks, his acne, the things he struggled with. I remember after the BET Award, during the BET Awards in '09, when Michael died, Joe was talking about starting a record company. And that took a lot of people aback because, Michael was just died, possibly killed, and you're talking about your new record label opening up. And even me, I had reservations about that. But I also know people do mourn in different ways. And could it have been a little bit of shock? Because when you lose a child, I'm sure, I don't have children, but losing someone that close, especially somebody like Michael, who was a worldwide figure, I'm pretty sure that hurt him. I know that hurt him. I know it hurt Catherine. He talked about how it hurt. It was difficult for him when he walked into a store and he could hear his songs play, his son's songs playing on the radio, and how that hurt him. I know he was eaten up by it. And Michael, we forget something. Michael forgave his father, and he gave an excellent speech. You can actually listen to it on YouTube. And he talked about how Joe Jackson was and is to him, and how this was his father, and he wouldn't change it because he knew why his father pushed him. Joe Jackson was born in 1929. My grandfather was born in 1918, so my grandfather would have been 100. Both of my grandfathers, if they had lived, they would be 100 right now. And the era that they grew up in, of course, that was a time when oppressed black people was the law. It was a time when, you worked hard, you would go work 2 or 3 jobs. If you weren't in school, you had to work. And Joe Jackson was from that era. Excuse me. He was from that era. He worked those jobs. He performed multiple times, and he was doing this while raising a family. He was working on the side on his music. And when he couldn't continue in those endeavors, he had his children do it because he saw that talent in Michael. He saw that in Janet. He saw that in Jackie. He saw it in Jermaine. He saw it in Marlon. He saw in Tito, all of them. And he wanted to make sure that his children would not have to work in a steel mill, multiple hours, sweating like a dog, the way that he did. And he was out hustling. And he made sure that his children understood that when you're in this business, when you're in the entertainment industry, you got to hustle. And there's more demanded out of you than you expect. To much is given, much is required. Now, was he perfect? No. Did I have my issues with him and some things he said? Yes. And I want to address, too, the New York Daily News called Mr. Jackson the family pariah. New York Daily News, first and foremost, this is the same news company that called Bill Cosby a rapist before the facts of any case came out in court. So fuck them. Excuse my language, but that's just how I feel. But when someone is dying, you don't go out and attack someone, calling them a pariah, especially when they're on their deathbed. This man is the reason why there is a Michael, there's a Janet. You know, when Janet Jackson, I read, wanted to be an attorney at one point, and Joe Jackson said, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to be in the entertainment industry. It's like, Daddy, I don't want to do it. He said, listen to me. You do as I say. And look what paid off. He got on Good Times. He got on Different Strokes. She was an actress before she was, Miss Rhythm Nation and Pleasure Principle, things like that. He's responsible for that. So, he's survived by a host of grandchildren. I've seen the tributes poured out. His grandsons, Randy Jackson Jr., gave a tribute to him. I know that Tito's son said something about him. So they've all, practically all of them have said something about Joe Jackson and, in tribute to the man who he was. And, obviously they love him and miss him. And, we shouldn't be disrespecting someone that's sick and dying like that. So in closing, and I know I've been rambling, guys, this is not my best video. And thank you for the person that's here that liked the video, that's watching. I see you. We need to get more. We're going to build this website up. I'm going to have to set up some more. I'm going to have to start doing a PayPal account, guys, here, because this is fun doing this just to come up here on YouTube, but it's even better if you can get paid and make money from it. Let me take some water for a second. Well, this is all I wanted to say, but, to Mr. Jackson, rest in power, sir. Rest in peace. Thank you for your work. Thank you for giving us your sons as this gift to the world that you shared and we continue to be endowed with. Thank you for giving us Michael. Thank you for giving us Janet, the Jackson 5, the whole Jackson family, the music that we have here, the influence on other artists. You played a hand in that. So thank you. Thank you for everything. And I also say to his family that may he rest in peace. 89 years old is a good life. My grandfathers, one lived to be 84, the other one lived to be 96. So when you get to be in your 80s and 90s, and Mr. Jackson also had some health problems. I saw he was suffering from a series of strokes that he had, as well as he had a pacemaker put in a couple years ago. He had a high fever. He seemed to be a guy that celebrated life, and he lived life to the fullest. So Joe Jackson, 89 years old, was well lived, sir. Say hello to your son for us, both of them. And with that, guys, I'm out. I'll be doing another video, but rest in power, Mr. Jackson. And with that, you all take care. I'm gonna share a link with you all. Let me see if I can put it in the next. I'll put it in the when I edit this. So with that being said, guys, you take it easy. Be blessed. Thank you.